Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes. We'll just let people trickle in. In the meantime, if you can take a minute to rename yourself, if you go in the top right hand of your screen, there's going to be three little dots. I could probably follow my own instructions here. But if you want to put your first name, last name, the state you're in, and if you like to share preferred pronouns, love to respect those. Um, and I would also love to know, what if you want to pop in the chat, what you're growing, where you're at, what the weather's like today. I always want to know what the weather's like. Uh, and we'll just get going in a couple minutes here. All right. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. There's a few more people trickling in here. Pop in the chat what the weather's like today. Where are you? What's happening? I'm normally located just west of Spokane, but I'm down in Union, Oregon today, and it is quite beautiful. But we got a little snow, and it's supposed to dump a whole bunch uh, tonight, and tomorrow. So I'm gonna get out of Dodge and go back to Spokane tonight. That's my plan. 10 different species of livestock. Dang, Mike, y'all are busy. Good job. All right. Well, them that ain't here will have to catch up. We're gonna get going. Welcome everyone to the Good Meat Project Lowdown. I am your host, Beth Robinette. I'm a fourth generation cattle rancher from Spokane, Washington. Um, and I am really pleased to share some information from our guests today around how to create great digital assets for your social media and website and take really beautiful pictures that tell a story about all the good work that we're doing. Um, the Lowdown is an educational webinar series that is meant to support all y'all good meat producers with marketing and technical support to help you guys do a better job of moving your product to market. And of course, we always want to hear feedback on what that means to you. So if you have ideas of things you want to hear in the future, we love to hear those. Um, we're going to talk about if you want to pop over to the community agreements, Meredith. Here's the agreements for our chat today. The TLDR on this is be chill, my babes. Let's be kind to each other. Let's be thoughtful, respectful, which this group always is. And of course, I have my esteemed co-host Alex Miller here with me, seventh generation farmer from Tennessee and a professor of business at University of Tennessee. He always brings such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I am just so pleased to co-host alongside him. So, with that, I think we will introduce our rad guests. I'm joined by Whitney Jacques and Noreen Hiskey. Whitney is a longtime diversified vegetable and livestock producer based out of Spokane. You can find her online under Verdant Hair Farms. But Whitney has managed a variety of farming operations over the years, from educational to production focused, nonprofit and for profit organizations. She's raised and grown just about every critter and veggie you can think of, and she shares all of that journey, the good and the bad, on her extremely entertaining social media platforms, which I am a huge fan of. And we're also joined by Noreen Hiskey, who started as an enthusiastic eater and home cook and launched a blog in 2011 to share her food adventures with the world. She quickly learned that a good photo was what really engaged an audience with her content. Her blog grew into a YouTube channel, and she's now a restaurateur and food photographer based out of Spokane. And normally we also host office hours after this call with the amazing Tim Joseph of Maple Hill Creamery. Tim's not able to join us yet, had something come up today. But I'll be there if you want to stick around and chat with me. I'm happy to talk. So Alex, would you like to kick us off and ask our guests our first question?
Sure. Excuse me. Really excited about this session. The original vision for the Lowdown would be that we would bring in people with a lot of experience to share with those who could benefit from knowing about that experience. And with this program, we really get down in the nits and grits of okay, what's it going to take to market the meat that we're producing? And I think this is going to be an invaluable set of learning. So excited to get into it. Let's start though by just, if you don't mind, Noreen and Whitney, would you both give us a little bit of, this is sort of a unique thing that you're doing. It's not something that everybody does. So tell us how you came to be where you are and sort of fill in the background a little bit for us, if you would. Noreen, you want to start?
Sure. Kind of as introduced by Beth there, like I started off as an avid eater, and food's really been central in my life and has been a love language of sorts among my family. And in my culture, being an Indian, you're often like just greeted with being asked if you want a cup of tea or have you eaten? That's like the first greeting in the culture. And so it kind of came as no surprise that that's what I clung on to when I moved to the US from India and built a life here. And on the insistence of my husband, he kind of encouraged me to start a food blog, share what I was just kind of taking pictures of and sharing with just my family, mostly of what I was eating and what I was cooking and what I was experimenting with in the kitchen. And that kind of grew into an on and off career for about 7-8 years. I shared whatever I felt like at the moment, like recipes, blogging, and started developing it. But when I started blogging, I really quickly realized how important that thumbnail image or that hero shot was to get people to click on your recipe and actually read the recipe or read your blog post. And so that really led me down a rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to take a really good photo. I don't really have a professional background, but I love the technology we're in right now, where you can just YouTube and learn pretty much any skill if you're committed to wanting to do that. And so I self-taught myself a lot about photography. Also have a brother who is very into like hobby landscape photography, who I keep calling and be like, hey, how do I do this? Or can you give me any tips? And things like that. And so just pretty much learned through online tutorials. And I enjoyed doing that part a lot more than I enjoyed developing the recipes and sharing that, because I'm a cook that kind of just wings it a lot of time. Like I don't measure things out. I don't have a precise ways of the way I cook. And so that was a little bit of a struggle, but I loved the photography part of it. And it also developed to where I realized how quickly we were moving from still photos and still blog recipes to videos and short clips, and people want to actually just see it and watch it and hear it instead of read a whole blog post about it. And so again, taught myself how to edit videos, how to stitch them together. And it also led me to start offering my services to like other restaurants and food related businesses. And so now I do that on the side with my other like food business, where I cater and actually run a pop-up restaurant and starting a new restaurant. But I really enjoy telling people's stories through like the photo and the videos, and just like having good content online, helping them get to that point. And so that's where I'm at right now. I take photos for other businesses.
Great. Thank you for that. Whitney, could you do the same sort of thing? What's your background? How did you get to this spot?
Sure. So, I am a first generation farmer, and I've been farming in this region for 14 years. I started off working for a nonprofit, and I was there for 7 or 8 seasons, and then I moved on to my own projects, and have worked for other farms and things like that, managing. But I think it's really important for people to be able to see a woman farming, especially a single mom, especially like a woman that maybe doesn't necessarily present in the world as somebody who looks like a typical farmer. And so I started my social media accounts, oh, I don't know, probably like 8 years ago or something like that, and have been pretty good about trying to like keep up on that all the time and learning like those platforms are always changing. And so trying to like stay on top of what's new, but also kind of staying true to myself while I do that. Like I'm not like I don't do like, trending reels a lot, like, cause that's just not really me. Mostly I take like a lot of photos of just like my day-to-day stuff, with my kids, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like there are days where I'm like really proud of what I'm doing, and I'll be like, oh my God, what a time to be alive, and take pictures of that. And then there are other days where I'm like, oh shit, everyone died, like so making sure that I'm not like painting this like picture that like every day is just so beautiful and the sun is always shining and my sheep are always clean, and like it's really important to me to like share the real scene out there. So I take photos strictly on my phone. I do like videos and reels and stuff too on there. I share a lot in my stories, like probably more so on Instagram stories than I do like in my actual grid, just because like I don't know, it feels way more informal to me. And I actually over the years, I don't have a ton of followers. I probably have like I have like 2000 or something, like more than 2000. But it's funny because anytime I'm anywhere in town, I always run into people who are like, I've never met you before, but I feel like we're friends. Like, I'm so excited about what you're doing. And so it is like a really great relationship building tool. And then people feel like they're invested in your business, which is kind of awesome. So anyway, yeah.
Cool. Cool. How did the two of you link up to the extent that you are? Did you?
I won it. I won Noreen.
How did you win?
Yeah, it was
There's bound to be a
actually
story there.
like I followed Whitney for a really long time. I also followed Beth. I like following local food growers. Like I love doing farmers markets and things like that. But we didn't actually know each other, hadn't met in person. Like she said, I felt connected because she shares her real life. And I like being connected to the people growing the food and things like that. And so I posted, actually, it was just a giveaway, a photography package giveaway that Whitney won, and got to meet her in person and get to actually see what she does and where she does it. Like, and it was really cool to see that she was farming in like an urban neighborhood. And I love that so much. Like, I wish every empty lot in neighborhoods were used for that. And so we just happened to meet on by chance, and I did a free package shoot for her.
Meredith, do you want to throw up the slideshow again? We have some pictures.
They turned out so nice. I loved it.
Probably didn't put them in a useful order for you, but I'll tell you which ones they are. These are some of Whitney's pictures.
Yeah,
I think they're the last two slides are the Noreen ones. We'll go back to these.
Yeah. Aren't those beautiful? They turned out so great.
Well, Whitney, let's go back to those other photos. I mean, you talked a little bit about your approach to content creation, but like, could you share a little more about how you go about doing that? I mean, one thing I will say is you are a relentless poster. Like you have been so consistent for like the entire time I've been following your social media. I feel like you post every day.
I try to, yeah. And it's intentional because, um, you know, the more you have people looking, the more engagement you get. And then, like, when I do have things that I'm trying to sell, then more people see it. And so, even if it's just something stupid, like, my sheep walking around, like, I'll take like just a quick video of something like that. Or like, the other day, my daughter tried on the shoulder gloves for having to go in and help an animal give birth, and she didn't know what they were, and she's like running around the garage, and I just took a stupid video of her with this glove on because it made me laugh. And I just put stuff like that up. But like sweet moments like this where, like, we have lambs, like that stuff, people love to see that. So when the lambs are born, it's always like tons of content. And there are times where it feels like, to me, like, I'm like, what would anybody even want to see? It's December, there's nothing going on. But like a sheep with snow on its back, or a chicken in the snow or something, people love that stuff. So just like little things that I kind of take for granted as a grower, that I realize, like, I kind of try to think like, well, what's a person who just like lives in the city? What's something that like they would just be tickled to see? Like that, just like something simple. And I have friends that will be like, oh my God, how are your ducks this morning? Can I see them? So yeah, so then like all my internet friends can see it too.
Um, and I know that you like are really often vulnerable on your social media too, like which I appreciate, because I think so much of social media is like this veneer that we put over what's actually happening, and it's not very authentic. I find your social media to be very authentic to who you are. Like if I met you on the street and shook your hand, but like I guess my question is like, what kind of response do you get from people when you share like more of the like harder side of what you do?
Um, Sometimes people just unfollow me, which is fine. Um, and so, but I get a lot of support. So like if it's something like I recently, like the farm that I was working on terminated my contract, which, no fault of mine. It was like they just decided to change paths with that farm. Um, and so I have to share that, right, with people who follow me because they come to that farm to see me. And that was really hard, having to be like, hey, like, I'm, and a lot of times I think on social media, people will try to like silver lining stuff, like, oh yeah, this thing is happening, but we're gonna be great. And I'm like, you know what? I don't feel great. I feel sad. I feel crappy, and that's okay, you know. And I feel like it allows like other farmers to say those kinds of things too, like the people who are watching, and just people in general, like, hey, like, this sad thing is happening to me, and it's okay that I'm sad, you know. So the last one I posted about that stuff, like I had tons of people reach out to me with just like the sweetest messages, and like lots of folks that were, just wonderful. So, it just kind of depends.
Quick follow-up question there. You referred to customers and farmers as being maybe two different audiences. Do you have a feel for how many of your 2,000 followers, let's say, are in each of those categories?
Um,
Or maybe
I've
there's other categories that I'm not even thinking about, like people who just follow you who aren't customers or farmers.
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of people who I will probably never meet and will never buy anything of mine. Um, and those are like just like fans, I guess, like kind of like a crunchy mom set, Um, and then farmer wise, like it's a lot of folks that I've met through just networking and stuff that follow me on there. But also like people who've been following me for a long time and will follow me, like physically follow me to like wherever I'm farming and buy from me, which is pretty awesome too. So I don't know what percentage that would be. I would say I've probably met like a quarter or more of the people who follow me online in person, like and sometimes they'll just show, like, I've had people drive from like all over the state for my plant sales and stuff just because they found me on social media and wanted to meet me and buy something from me,
Hmm.
which was very flattering and like great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, Noreen, you want to talk a little bit about what it takes to like condense all of your YouTube learning down into a little bit, help us understand understand what it takes to take a really good picture?
Like, I think number one would be taking a small YouTube thing to just learn the 3 or 4 basics and understand what a camera is actually doing in terms of just your ISO aperture, like, and what it does with light. And that's like a quick 10-minute tutorial, and that would be my go-to start. And then there's a lot of little tricks, like, for example, a clean lens is a huge difference. Just wipe that lens off right before you take that picture. Can't tell you how many times you just get like these blurry shots and you're like, it's a nice shot, but it's cloudy. Like, it's just, you've got a dirty lens, your phone's dirty. So a clean lens. Another big one is good lighting. Like, you want that light to come, like if you're shooting a subject, you want that light to be behind you or on either side of you, not behind the subject, so you don't get silhouette. So always shoot with the light behind you, highlighting the subject. Diffuse light is really, really good, more than direct light. So cloudy days are your best friends. Get a lot of those shots in on cloudy days than direct sunlight. And then we live in an age where we're taking pictures on digital things. You can actually see the picture before you're taking it. So don't be afraid to like move around and like look at different angles. Not everything needs to be shot from above. Like, usually when you're taking like pictures of people, you shoot it from above for a better angle. But I feel like with animals and farming and stuff like that, get low down onto like the level of your subject. Play around with angles, really just take a lot of shots to see what's working and what's not. We don't have the thing of film anymore, so you're not wasting, you just delete shots that aren't good. You're not running out of film or anything these days. And so don't just stick to one thing, like really try to experiment and take different angles and different compositions, get down there with the animals. I love how Whitney takes photos of her sheep, and just seeing the animal up close is, what I like seeing. And then I would really say, like, just don't be intimidated by what you're seeing online. Just keep clicking, like keep taking those little clips. The little clips are the best thing to do, because then you can just go ahead and stitch them in your social media apps. And nowadays, stitching them together in Instagram, and I don't really use TikTok, but is super easy, where you just throw in a bunch of clips and then you can edit them as you're posting them. It's no longer where you have to, edit sound and things like that. Technology's gotten so good at being able to stitch those little clips together and make a really cool video with like music in the background or anything like that too, where I just say, keep doing it. Like, even when you don't think it's interesting, do it, because someone else will find it interesting.
I think that's particularly good advice for folks who have grown up farming. Beth, I don't know about you, but growing up on a farm, and it's just, we just take so much stuff for granted that people who have never been on a farm would be amazed at. I mean, every little thing, I've had somebody, City Slicker or somebody who says, holy cow, I've never thought about that. And it's like, well, how could you not know that that's the way it was done? Of course they don't know that's the way it's done. So I think both of our guests have stressed the importance of viewing your operation from not your perspective, but from the perspective of outsiders, and how fresh their eyes are going to be to it, and not John just saying. I mean, I just take for granted everybody lives in a farm in East Tennessee, and of course they don't. So I think that for all the viewers, that's good advice.
Yeah, I think I'm much diminished in my social media presence from what I used to do. But when I had a bigger social media presence, like, I really try, my goal was to try and find like what was my moment of delight in my day, and how could I share that with my audience. Like, there's always something that happens in my, like, I see, so like the way that the light hits something, there's just always something so beautiful. I'm like, wow, I wish someone else could see this, and like, wouldn't, I mean, to me, it's almost like evangelical like approach. Like I really want people to see this beautiful place the way that I see it. So like even very mundane things to me are like the most beautiful things, kind of to both the points that you both made, Noreen and Whitney.
So, Noreen, if I could, I'd like to go just a little bit deeper on one specific thing, and that's photography, not of people and landscape and animals, but of food. Because it seems
Mhm.
to me that food portraiture is a different art altogether. Do you have any comments or pointers about it specifically? Because I know a lot of
It
people are
def
just buying stock photos of their product, and that doesn't seem to be ideal.
Yeah, it definitely is a completely different niche. I'd say making the product look appealing is more about like the composition of the shot. When it comes to food photography, it is getting the right lighting. You want, your food to look like you want to dive in and eat it. No filters, none of that stuff works when you're working with food, because you don't want to tint it a color that it isn't. You want your greens to stand out. You want your plate, the meat to look juicy. A little handy tip is when you are shooting meat and stuff like that, keep a little spray bottle of water or water and glycerin, and then kind of spray it, keep the meat looking moist on the plate. Gives it that shine and makes it appealing. Lighting is huge with food photography. I've actually transitioned just because having dreary weather over here, not being able to shoot only in the daytime made it a little hard for me to do what I do. But I've learned how to use a flash, just a regular speed light, which is like $30, and a diffuser, which isn't very expensive either, to get that natural light at any time of day. And you want to never light food from directly in front of, like, your light sources has to be on the sides, so you get the shadows of the food, and so it makes it more appealing. You don't want the light to be directly in front of the food, like from the point, like if I was shooting, I don't want it actually behind me. Behind me is great for like subjects on a farm or people and stuff like that. You kind of want it off to the sides. So a nice little window, and you put your food, your plate there. Also, backgrounds are huge. Like you can just get little like plywood painted, spackled. I've made my own backdrops a lot of times, but it makes a big difference in presenting the food. If you just had a couple little backgrounds, you can put the plate on and then shoot. There are also very specific YouTube videos for food photography, in particular, that have great little tips like that.
Noreen, we had a question in chat I want to tack on here. So let's imagine three different stages of the food. There's the frozen product that most of us deal with, then there's the thawed product before cooking, and then there's the cooked product. Do you have thoughts on each of those three varieties, and when would you use one or the other, or do you try to avoid using one of those three?
Frozen is hard to photograph. I'd say I would photograph it in the packaging and things like that, where you're like if it was vacuum sealed or packaged a certain way, or with butcher twine, and then have a couple fresh pieces. Frozen meat doesn't look appealing. It isn't drawing, but you can show the packaging in a frozen state while keeping some fresh raw meat, like that is, pink and has not been frozen. That would look more appealing. But then you're also setting up the story of this meat is available frozen, but they're looking at what it looks like fresh. I definitely say frozen is hard to shoot, so try to incorporate the processes into that shot to tell the story of the whole thing. Cooking it itself is actually a really cool, like action shots are cool to see, like a sauteing, a grilling, like a steak on a grill, things like that. I love those kind of shots too. But again, you can have a cooked piece with a piece of raw meat, and then have a frozen thing to set the story of what you're trying to show the product processes.
Thanks for that. That's useful. Beth, I don't want to step on you if you had a question you wanted to get in.
Okay. We have another question in the chat that I think is relevant. Like what the question in the chat is about what editing apps to use, and my general question is about like what tools you use. So that could be like your camera or your cell phone, or you mentioned like speed flash, diffuser,
Yeah.
and what apps are you using, especially if you have free ones, because we love free shit.
Obviously have I have the good cameras, the DSLR and the mirrorless, but I honestly am a firm believer it's not exactly about the fancy tools. It's more about learning how to use what you've got really well. Because I've seen people take phenomenal pictures with just a cell phone, and I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between a DSLR shot and that. If you learn those 3 principles of ISO, aperture, your light, and things like that, you could even use the pro mode in your phone to get better photos, because then you understand that a wider aperture is letting in more light, and so if it's kind of blowing out a little bit, you want to like reduce that. So understanding just those 3 concepts and what they are will help you take better pictures with whatever you've got. And then for editing, I use, just because I already subscribe to it to edit for the professional photographs, I use Adobe Lightroom or and Photoshop, but they have like photography packages that are like $10 a month to use them, versus buying like the very expensive software and owning it. And then that way you get all the most recent updates. So they have subscriptions for as less as $10 for just photography and videography. But honestly, I reach for my phone camera 90 times more than I do for my actual camera, because if the lighting isn't perfect, if the thing, like the phone does such a great job at taking a lot of that guesswork out. And so if you don't have Photoshop, and I also really like I use a Samsung, and so I like the editing software on my phone. I don't usually edit my phone photos very much. I find just like a quick filter and if it's a little too bright, adjusting brightness and contrast and stuff like that brings out the photo more. Canva is one I would say is a good tool for more taking your pictures and adding graphics and making it, and it's free. Like you can have a paid thing, but the free is good enough. I've never paid for it. But you can add text to it. You can make your grid on your Instagram stand out a little more by adding the photo, but also having text and graphics that catch people's eyes a lot more. As for other tools, I think pretty much I edit video through Instagram. It's the easiest, it's the quickest than having to find a separate software. There are softwares that do it. I just don't use them enough.
Good. Thanks, Noreen. Whitney, could we change the tack just a little bit and talk about development of content? And an issue that I know I've struggled with is the ratio of telling versus selling. So there's a story to be told about farm life and all that sort of stuff. Feel good stories, feel bad story, whatever, and the whole spectrum. But there's another element that says, okay, this video is about selling something. And the original impetus of Lowdown was to help people market and sell their product. So what are your thoughts on the right ratio of how much time do you spend telling your story versus selling your product in your digital world, in your social media efforts?
I would say that my day-to-day postings are mostly about my storytelling. Like I use my story the stories in Instagram to just kind of like little snapshots of what I'm up to. And then I use my grid more for posting about like upcoming things that are happening. The other thing that I do is, so like for me, I have, I've had store days or farmers market days or events that I'm doing or plant sale days. And I always make sure that I am keeping my bio in my Instagram updated with where I am, hours that I'm going to be there, what I'm going to have, because people don't want to have to scroll and find anything out. They want to be able to just open it up and see it. And then making sure that all of your links are current. So like if you have your website up there, make sure that your website is up to date and it's not garbagey, because if it is, people are going to click on it and then they're going to get frustrated and they're just going to leave, and that's it. You've lost them, right? The other thing that you have to be really careful with, and I've noticed this a lot, like over probably the last like 6 months, is that if you mention in the caption of your posting that anything is for sale, or like say that the algorithm will keep people from seeing it. So you also, I've noticed that if I tag another farm or another like a farmer's market or something like that, I'll get like 20 likes. Whereas if I post just like a photo and say something like sure is rainy out there, like I'll get like 200. So the visibility goes way down if you mention it. So one trick that I utilize there is that I actually put the text in the photo, and instead of in the caption. So like if I have something coming up and I want to put like things that are for sale, I'll mention that in the actual photo itself. And then in the caption say something like can't wait to see you this weekend, so yeah, so those are just some little things, and those are just things that I've kind of figured out just by being like, that's kind of suspicious, like why isn't this working like it normally does, like, so yeah, so I do things that way. Yeah, so it has to be, people have to feel like they're invested in you as a farm and a person, and then they want to buy things from you. And so you kind of have to weave the two things together pretty much all the time.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think you both kind of have mentioned how important video is, but is video like mandatory part of content creation now? Can you get by on still images? You got to be doing video.
You got to do videos, especially on. I mean, like, I'm not on TikTok, but I think TikTok isn't. I think it's all videos, right? And then, like, on my Instagram, like my reels get so much more traction than a still shot does. But the other thing that you have to be cognizant of is that if you want people buying your products, then you need to be getting out there to people who are local to you and not just trying to like get people to like your stuff. Like it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'm thankful, sure, if someone who lives in, England likes a post that I do, but at the end of the day, that doesn't benefit me in any way aside from like a little dopamine rush from like people seeing my stuff, So, yeah, so making sure that you're always tagging your location in your posts, like the town that you live in somehow, either like, I make sure that I've got like a tag for where I'm farming that I'm dropping in those posts so that people can click it and know where I am. And then also like when you do like your hashtags at the end of your post, make sure you mention the state that you live in, the town that you live in. Even like if it's like neighborhood specific, tag that neighborhood, because then it ends up on that town's story for the day. So you'll be exposed to a lot more people that live in your area, which is what you want. So yeah, but yes, videos, people love a video. I actually just did a video the other day where I was literally throwing seed around in my front yard. And I thought, I was just like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make this silly video. I was super dorky and people loved it. And I was like, I'm doing nothing. But it was like, people were like, yay, this is so great. What a great idea. And I'm like, what? Like, why this? But you never know.
Yeah, that's the stuff that really gets that connection part good. And then when you go to have a product or sell something, I feel like that connection makes such a huge difference. I also noticed this when I did pop-ups, like I would post regularly of what I was just cooking at home and things like that. And then when it came time to sell tickets for a pop-up or something like that, that connection was there really quickly and people would buy. And so definitely showing that side, the connection side, the real side, the who you are as a person, makes a big difference when you go sell something.
Thanks to both of you. I when you start talking about that, my own response is nobody's going to be interested in that. But I know that I've heard it enough times that I've got to believe that I'm wrong about that. I just can't stop feeling that way. Is that who in the world would care about some guy walking around in mud in his boots? It's just it's not a thing.
It
But
is hard,
apparently
and
it is
that's something I think Whitney does incredibly well, and I have a hard time doing. Being an introvert is sharing who you are as a person on to a bunch of people I don't know. It is hard, but it also forms that connection that you so need when you do end up, wanting to sell a product or marketing it. And it's something I'm working on constantly too.
Yeah, it is hard to get out there and like show people your face all the time. But it does make a huge difference in getting recognized and getting people interested in what you're doing. And again, yeah, like just whatever your day-to-day stuff happens to be, it's boring to you, but it's fascinating to people who have no idea how that works. So
what works for me is to remind myself that there are people who watch. There's a 24-hour video of of bears in Alaska eating salmon. And I admit it, I'm mesmerized by those things.
Beth
but to the bear, that would be really stupid to videotape that because it's just what bears do. And I keep having to tell myself, you are the bear. Just somebody wants to watch you do the stupid thing that you're doing every single day. So that's great. So we're approaching the point where I need to get in some final questions here. Anything that you want to get asking in chat, please, now's the time to get it in there. But I'll give you each sort of an all-purpose question. If there was one thing that you could do to improve the digital content, social media, what would be the one thing that you would offer to folks that are not as experienced as you are in this realm? Either one of you want to go first?
I would definitely say for me, it is having a stockpile of photos and content on hand that makes it easier for me to post regularly. I find it really hard to think of things on the fly, and then I just go long spells without posting because I just don't know what to post. And so I found like scheduling, like when it came to like my pop-up restaurant or something, I found that scheduling one day a month, half a day or even thing, and taking a lot of photos, a lot of video clips. It might be the same plate of food, but I would swap backgrounds and try to get it on different angles so I could post it like in the future. And it's the same, I'm not preparing that dish 10 times in the month, but I took photos of it with different angles and different things, so I had that stockpile. I like having those clips, and you're like, oh, I have that clip from the other day, and that I can post. Also, scheduling it helps be more consistent with it, like setting up a time of day where you just say like, hey, in the week I'm not good at that one. I wish to be. It's something I'm trying to, and I know with like a new upcoming restaurant and things like that I'm going to have to do it. I was researching like good scheduling apps that help with that aren't super expensive, because there are some that are ridiculously expensive, and I'm not looking to do this for like a bunch of different clients or collaborate or be an influencer in any way. But I've looked at like Buffer and Sprout, which have like affordable options to keep those posts scheduled in a way that makes it a little less effortless and more like consistent, because I do think the key with social media is consistency, is being regular in your posting, staying in people's views, and constantly helps.
A follow-up question related to scheduling in a different vein maybe is, do you have experience on, or particular times of the day that are good to post as you get more traffic and more response? It's one of the questions coming out of chat.
Yeah. So think about the times that like you're on your phone, right? It's like a lot of times when people like get home from work, they look at their phone, or on their lunch break, they look at their phone, or like maybe before bed, they sit down and they doom scroll for an hour. And so those are the times where you tend to get a lot more people looking at your stuff. Um, and you can schedule things for those times, but the thing is, it's like the more that you're interacting with the app, the more likely people are to see you also. Like, so I don't worry about that as much because people are going to see it anyway. Um, but it does make a difference. So maybe not posting like in the moment if you're going to put something on your grid. But like you can post in stories anytime because those are up for 24 hours and like they just roll. And like the more you post on there, the more it moves you to the front of somebody's line. So like, if you post something and then you don't post it moves you towards the end. And so if you post again, it moves you to the front. So it makes you more visible that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. I've got Whitney, did you have if you could only share one thing to someone who was coming up and all this, what would you share? Do you have an answer to that one? And then we've got another question from the chat I want to get to.
I have 3 things that are like really important. They're short though, I
like
promise.
it.
Okay, so when you're working, if you're working and there's other people around, always ask people to take your picture. Don't be shy because you want to get pictures of yourself doing your job. Like I've mentioned, I'm a single parent, so I tend to get kind of just made invisible in my life. And so if I'm not asking people to take my photo, then I don't have any. So that's important. Post often, which I've mentioned several times, like that engagement is huge. And then I was given a tip by somebody who's like a professional social media person like a year ago, and it's made a huge difference for me. So you're going to take pictures all the time, just of dumb stuff, a sunset, whatever's like tickling your fancy, like silly things. And then you're going to go through your phone and you're just going to like kind of scroll through your pictures, and whatever makes you pause for a second and go, whoa, that's the thing that you post. Even if it's old, if like you just can flip through and then be like, oh my God, that picture is awesome. Like, I love this. And then just, oh, thinking back to spring days and lambs, or, oh, thinking back to that winter when we had that crazy snow, look at all of us buried. Ha ha. Like whatever it is, if it makes you stop, it's going to make other people stop too.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's great. I appreciate that very much. We got a really detailed question I love in the chat. Any recommendations when you're trying to sell shares? Because this is a really tricky thing. It's hard to make shares look great because they're always going to be a drawback you're going to be pulled back to get them, and then it just looks like there's a table full of packaged goods. And what's your big secret for making shares look appealing?
I'd say definitely take some of the product out of the packaging to show it clearer. Also, like we mentioned, like showing some of the process, like showing how to use it, is a great way too. So try to incorporate more than just the shares and the packaging, the uses of it, how someone's enjoying it would sell it better, I would say.
So, Noreen, what I hear you saying is don't take pictures of the shares, take pictures of sort of using the shares.
Yes.
I think that there may be some wisdom in that.
I've taken photos of like the box coming home. So like, because people can't really conceptualize how much animal is, and they think it's going to be gigantic, especially if you're dealing with like cattle. They're like, whoa, my God, but I always take photos of when I'm like a whole sheep, and I'm like, look, it's a box, like it's not anything crazy. And then I've actually taken everything out of the box and then like laid it all out on a table and taken an overhead shot so you can see everything that you get. And that's been really helpful too, because then I feel like it's less of a concept and more of a concrete thing that people can see and they understand. People are super visual, so that is really helpful. I take videos of myself like cooking different pieces and parts of animals so that people can kind of see how that works. Like just getting good photos, and then maybe taking a picture of like a cut sheet even from the butcher and saying like, oh, look at all these amazing things that when you get a whole animal, you can specify what you like, you know, and then someone will be like, well, what's this thing? And then I can follow up and be like, hey, like, have you ever heard of this cut of beef or this cut of lamb? Do you know what this could do? And then like going from there and like taking photos of that too.
Just a question occurs to me listening to both. How much time do you spend on this each day? Your typical day would you spend on social media and content for social media?
Doom scrolling more than the actual posting. Posting not as regularly as I should, but not more than like half an hour in a day, really. But watching everyone else's content a lot more time.
Mhm.
I would say actually posting, I don't really take a whole lot of time. It'd probably be less than half an hour a day. Like that stuff goes pretty quick. It's the engagement afterwards, because that's where you get people is like, you know, every comment that comes in on a photo, every comment that comes in on a video, even if you just respond with like a heart emoji, you have to respond to those people because that's going to get you more views and people feel like they're more engaged with you and then they feel more invested in what you're doing. And I get like tons of messages and stuff like that, and I respond to everybody, even if it's just to like heart it, you know, like I see you, thank you. But it's really easy because I have notifications turned on my phone, so it takes me like just a second to be like, oh, boop, okay, heart, thanks, you know, like, all right, you know. I didn't have notifications turned on my phone for a while, and it actually made things worse because I would open up Instagram and just be like, oh my God, like I cannot deal. There's too many things, and I would feel really overwhelmed. So just kind of dealing with it as it comes through is a lot easier.
Yeah. Do you ever have you experienced social media burnout, and how do you
Oh,
deal with that? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Like there are times, you know, especially when I'm like going through things in my own life that are hard, like I don't feel like a person that somebody would want to see, you know? And so that can be kind of hard. And sometimes when that happens, that's when you just see a lot of video of my critters and not so much me teaching or talking about things because I don't want to. So, yeah. So, but I still feel like I I still want to be out there, but just not me, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's what when you do what Whitney said is go through your photos and things like that and post something that catches your eye, and it doesn't have to be super personal all the time. Definitely felt the burnout, but that again, that's when I just reach into like the stockpiles of photos and think of something just to post. You just have to keep engagement. That's all.
Yeah. Both of you are into this enough that your goal is to do something every day. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a sweet spot that says, well, you know, if you're not into it that much, you still need to do this much per week in order to just sort of get some sort of minimal response? Or am I just thinking about this all wrong?
I mean, I don't think that you need to overcomplicate it too much. Just making sure that you're, you know, at least like a few times a week posting something. Stories make that super easy. Like,
Yeah.
you just literally point, shoot, and then it goes on a thing and then it disappears. So if you're like, oh my God, that was so dumb, it's gone in 24 hours. Like, it's okay. And then, like I said, like I don't post on my grid a ton. But I do have to do that from time to time. Another thing that's actually really cool is you can turn your stories into a reel. So like if you take a bunch of stories, like if you're like castrating or something like that, and you're taking videos of like doing something like that, like I usually take videos of all that stuff on the farm. Then you can just kind of say, oh, turn this story into a reel, beep, boop, 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 and it just does it for you, which is really nice. So then you get 2 posts out of just one thing that you've done.
Cool.
We got another question in the chat here from Meredith. When you're selling online, do you use, and I'm assuming this is like for your website specifically, do you just use the product photos or the use photos, or you think both work in the context of like a website sales?
I definitely think both, to tell the story of the whole thing. Like, I like as a consumer knowing how to use a product, how to, so I would say both, on a website.
Yeah, I definitely like doing that too. And I really try to stay away from like using any kind of like stock photo also, because I think that's like, um, I just can't do it. So like, so I have to do it myself or have somebody like Noreen take help with photos for stuff like that.
All right. Well, that brings us to the bottom of the hour. Thank you so much both for your time. This has been a great conversation. I certainly learned a lot. I hope all y'all who joined us today did as well. Meredith, you want to throw our last slide up there? Of course, we offer these webinars free of charge, but if you learned something today that was meaningful to you and you'd like to throw a little in the kitty so that we can continue to host these webinars in the future, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to a page to do that very painlessly. So we do appreciate your support. And you can join us next month. We'll be joined by Carrie Richards of Richards Regenerative, talking about logistics of shipping frozen meat. I don't know. Did I make it sound scary enough? I wanted it to seem really scary. Yeah, with that, we don't have our normal office hours at the bottom of the lowdown, but if you want to stick around and hang out with me, I'll be here for a little bit. So yeah, we'll see you for office hours, or you can go on about your day, whatever suits you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Beth. For most of us, spring's on its way. Hang in there, folks. It'll be here. Bye-bye.